of people make a mistake is they go out and first try to patent an idea before they've designed it. And the issue with that is it's like creating the shipping box before you design the product. You want to have the product in detail developed, so when you go get the patent, you can build the patent around all the unique things that we've designed for that product. Whenever you start with the patent, it puts us in a box that we have to design within, or you have to go back and edit the patent, or sometimes resubmit a new patent, which just causes more time and money that most startups just don't have. Now, if you are like dead set on a patent, you could do a provisional patent, and that's just a placeholder, lasts a year. Let's just get the design going, and then you can change that up pretty loosely down the line with the patent attorney. You don't even really need a patent attorney for the non-provisional. I mean, obviously, we always recommend you have the best team, but you have to also balance your resources. And then keep in mind that patent is a tool like any other tool. It has its pros, but it also is not the end-all gatekeeper of your IP. You know, if you look at any good, successful product on the market, you'll clearly see there's strong competitors after a given period of time. And patents expire around 18 years, which is a good amount of span, but it's not this end-all, be-all thing. And what I want to say to people that like are so concerned about their IP is, I see a lot of people take the best kept secrets to their grave. And what I mean by that is people spend so much energy on trying to protect their ideas, they forget that they need to be building a team to get it to market and to have it thrive. And those are almost on two opposite sides of the coin. And you can do both, but understand that the hardest part with launching a product is getting the idea out there. And nobody's going to be super concerned about selling your idea until you've either redefined what we consider like a staple in design, like if you figure out how to generate energy a new way, or, you know, you find a way to cure cancer. Like there's certain things that, yes, they're going to get attacked very quickly. But 99% of ideas, like the next best you know, computer design or comb or you know, I'm not coming across products that are shaking up the world in such a way that people are going to lose their mind when they see the idea. What gets people in trouble, or when people run into problems with theft, is whenever the idea is producing 2 million plus in revenue, then people start to grab eyeballs, and people start to say, "Oh, there's a market there. Let's rip it off." But people aren't ripping off things that aren't selling. So if you're not selling it, you're probably not even going to get the time of day of a company to rip you off. Regardless of how good it is, it's the marketing that you got to push out there. And this kind of goes back to why are these fast food chains so powerful, or not powerful, but at least so popular. It's like, people aren't going to fast food chains because they know they're the best burgers in town. They're going to fast food chains because people know what they are. Their message is so strong that it's consistent. It's the branding, it's the marketing, but they already have that customer relationship built. So I'm better off buying $1 million franchise from McDonald's than I am going to start my own gourmet hamburger joint. And that's because of the branding and marketing behind it. And it's important that we can define that there's more in play than just a good product, and understand how all the pieces work together. And if you start spending $15,000, $20,000, even $5,000, $10,000 on a patent starting out, when your total budget is, you know, maybe that's a quarter of your budget, or that's 90% of your budget, well, now you've really pigeonholed yourself with the options you have. When you're a lean startup, you got to, you know, claw your way to the top. You got to really think about every penny being spent. Is this the way I want to use it? Is this the best use of that? Is there an ROI I can tie to this? Like, what's the shortest path to getting my money back? And the patent it can be a great tool, but it typically isn't that. And what I like to see, and this is me personally, is I want to see somebody that's ready to just get their idea out there, make some money, get their money back, and then make enough money to do their second idea balls to the walls. Because the reality is, if you are smart enough to come with one good idea, you probably have more in the back of your head. And that's, if you figure out how to get one product to market, you know how to get two products to market. That's why there's so many serial entrepreneurs. This is my like third or fourth company. And what I learned in the first company rolled into the second company, rolled into the third company. And it just, it's a compounding learning effect. It's not that the risk is not the same between the first and the second, because once you understand how things work, where the values are, where to put your time and energy, what the best product launch for your category is, like, these things change, and there's always room to improve, but you're going to know a path forward. You're going to know, okay, this is the type of team member we want to hire. This is not, you're going to have all these experiences in all these areas of growth. And, so you got to really focus on where, back to the question is like, where am I spending that money? Why am I so concerned with patenting this right away? What am I really afraid of? Am I worried that, the product's going to fail, or am I worried? Like, I guess it's more of, are my concerns really aligned with the reality? And I think looking on the outside in or inside out, you start to go, oh my gosh, everyone's going to love this. And we're so biased towards ourselves. I've designed stuff. I think, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to spend my own time, my weekends designing something after spending all week, you know, designing for other people. And then I might go and show it to people, and they're not, whether they like it or not, they never have had the same enthusiasm as the inventor coming up with the idea. Like, I don't really, it's very rare to see that. When that happens, when you can start showing it to people, you've really got something. But again, if you're not comfortable enough showing your idea, you can't get the feedback to make the changes to get to market with a strong product. And then let's say you are super IP concerned and everybody that touches your product needs to sign an NDA. It just slows. We have teams of people working on this. It's not typically one or two people. We might have 40, 50 people that your product touches before it hits market. Maybe more than that. It could be, so if we have to get every single person to sit down and sign an NDA, first of all, a lot of our vendors are just going to say, sorry, not interested. So you're looking, maybe you don't get first tier designers, or maybe you don't get first tier, because people have to, feel comfortable on these projects. There's time invested in signing contracts. People aren't just sitting down and signing contracts. So some people will, and that's not, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I don't want to sign anything that's going to stop me from working on another project unless there's enough investment in that one project, and it's going to determine how long I'm willing to give up that right to compete with that. Because, not that I want to go out and compete against my clients, but most of our clients will start something and then they might have a change of mind, go a different way with the project altogether, or you'll get a lot of same products in the same category, but they do a different thing. So that's super common for us, that things will trend, and we want to be able to ride that trend as well. We don't want to be like, oh, we can only do one water bottle when there's millions of water bottles on the market, or one stroller, or these are things that people have lots of different iterations on. And I don't know how many barbecues and smokers I've done. I've done a lot of hair products. We've done a lot of golfing products. I mean, I don't want to be out. So for me, there's a conflict of interest on wanting to sign these things. And if independent, and I'll do it, project by project, but 99% of the time, I'm just going to turn down the product, because unless there's a big investment and I know I can really make enough to keep me out of that for a while, I'm not that interested in it. And it's not even about how good your idea is, because at the end of the day, I have to be able to feed myself, and I want to see everybody succeed. But I definitely want to be able to know that I'm not pigeonholing myself out of helping somebody else. So there's limited protection. There's a way to mitigate it. Like my best understanding is that um, Amazon's a very big defender of patents. So if you are selling primarily on Amazon, then and you put in a claim that somebody's infringing on your patent, they will kick that other thing off until they can prove otherwise. So they actually kind of play the opposite, where you're guilty until proven innocent. The other thing that I really tell people is find a trusted manufacturer, either a broker or some kind of trusted manufacturer, because they have established relationships with these companies in China where it's in their interest not to ruin those relationships. If an individual is producing 10,000 units of something, China, and you're on your own, you're going, oh, I'm doing big orders, 10,000 units. They really don't think of you other than like just a little pond in the bucket. They might be making your product during the day and then making the knockoffs at night in the exact same factory with the exact same stuff. So, but when you're doing, millions of units, hundreds of millions of units, then they start to look at you as a player, and they don't want to lose that business. So you could do that by going through a broker where the broker is not going to allow them to steal. And they know who has good reputations and who doesn't. They normally have people physically overseas going through the factories, inspecting things. The other thing that we see people do is they'll break up the manufacturers. So they might have some of the parts made in one factory, some of the other parts made in another factory, and then assembled in a third factory. So nobody has all the information to make something. And that's a good way to do it. It's kind of like if you ever worked in a fast food restaurant, they do this where, the ingredients are already pre-frozen and made, and then you just kind of assemble them and stick it through the oven or whatever. And then, you can't go, like, it'd be hard for any pizza or any like fast food employee, or really probably most of these chain style restaurants, to duplicate what they cook, other than learn how to cook some steaks and things like that. But there's just a lot of kind of pre-made stuff that goes out, so you can't really replicate that restaurant.
What is the benefits to getting the patent after design versus before design?
Well, if you get, this is pretty straightforward. If you have the patent after the design, then when we're working together, we're going to find areas of improvement. We're going to find areas of creativity to create new concepts that can be added to the patent. So, most of the time, a lot of these projects, there might be a unique hinge that's designed, or a unique latch, or a unique combination of different components that haven't been used before. So there's that. Excuse me. So when you're taking when you're taking a product that's been well thought out and designed versus the concept of the product, there's typically an opportunity there to add something. And I don't know how many times I've worked on a product that I haven't been able to add some new twist or some new angle on the design that wasn't previously thought of. I mean, unless you're coming to me with an exact spec that you want me to model, there's almost no there's I don't know if there's ever really been a product that I haven't been able to say, hey, what about this or what about that?
So say I had a patent and I brought it to you, and I brought it to you to design the product, and there were some extra aspects that you were like, this is what needs to be in here.
Well,
Do I have to pay for a new patent, or is
this is really where you want to talk to the patent attorney, because it just, that's one of those, it depends. Sometimes they can add it to the patent. Sometimes they refile a new patent. Sometimes it's not a big deal. Sometimes it is. What's patentable, I'll leave that to the patent attorneys to decide. What's considered infringement. I don't try to get in that, because there's some very small nuances there. And a lot of it's speculative too. Patent law, or really any law, the more you get into it, you'll learn that it's not black and white, yes or no. It's gray and grayer and grayest and light gray. It's mostly a spectrum of what, and that's why certain attorneys do better than others, or they can build stronger patents and weaker patents. They're not equivalent. Like, a patent is not like a digital check mark. It's like, okay, you have you can have all different levels. Listing patents from $5,000 to over $100,000. There's a reason why people are willing to spend $100,000. Normally, it's the corporations and not the individuals. It just goes to show there's a reason. I'm sure patents go much higher than that. I haven't been involved in any, in more than the six figures, but I'm sure if you were to look, you would find that.
What is the difference between a good patent attorney and a bad one then?
So, what it is that is distinguishing, what the goal of a patent is to protect as broad of your idea as possible. So the idea is to get as many claims approved and to be as broad as possible. Those are the two things you're trying to achieve to get the strongest patent. And what that means, a claim could be like a feature or a unique part of the design that makes it unique, right? So we're talking about again, this is not my expertise here, so I don't want to get too in the weeds. But and then you have so that's a claim, and then you want to be broad. If I say I'm patenting a crayon and it's 3 inches long and it's a 1/4 inch thick and it has a tapered tip, somebody else comes out and makes one that's 3 1/4 inches long, and well, they're now outside the patent. So you might not say, you want to get vague, they might describe the shape or the function instead of the shape, or they'll get real creative about describing the purpose, but in the most vague way possible. Because the more vague it is, the harder it is for somebody to come into that space. So that's why vague wins. So in patent drawings, I don't think I've ever seen a patent drawing that has a dimension in it for that very reason, or specified color. Now there's utility and design patents. So design patent is based off of look. They're a lot easier to get. And then you have utility patents, which is what most people think of, which is off of function. So in a design patent, I know even less about those. But those are really for like clothing, or when you're, let's say you're designing like something that just looks unique, a shoe or a bicycle, but you haven't created any new technology. Those are areas where you can go for the design patent, or maybe a cell phone case, things like that, where you have a cool look to it, but you haven't really designed any new technology. So they're not, well, I don't know which one's more common or not. I see most people try to go for the utility first, and then normally the fallback is the design.
I've heard you say that a simple design is a complex design. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so a lot of people come to me and say, hey, Brandon, don't spend a lot of time and energy on this. Just make it as simple as possible. In design, we're pretty much start with, you're going to give me a problem, and we're going to lay out the pieces, and then we're going to solve for that problem in the shortest way. And a lot of times, there's more components that are needed at the beginning of something. And throughout time, we subtract out all the extra pieces and we find ways to simplify it. So it's normally a subtractive process to get things simple, then an additive process to get things complex. Actually, I have yet to have a client come to me and say, hey, Brandon, I really wish you would just, well, okay, I take that back. I had one client that did that. I said, hey, I wish you'd make it more complex. This looks too simple, but that's a whole nother, that's an outlier. But later on, when they went to manufacturing, they came back and they used our simple version of the design because it's cost effective and it's more reliable. So yeah, of course it's going to be the winner at the end of the day. But unless you're making some kind of toy or some kind of thing that's supposed to be uniquely odd, simplicity is the way to go. So the question is, how much time do you want to spend to simplify something and to take off the extra material and to figure out ways to lighten it? And right, this is an endless battle you can fight. You look at the most high performance cars, NASCAR and such. They're constantly fighting to make the cars lighter, stronger, faster. If you look at even turbine engines, the scramjet has no moving parts. It took them like 100 years to figure out how to do that. It's no moving parts. they're like Mach 14 engines or something. Um, and how it works is they have another engine that gets the vehicle moving to like a certain Mach, and then there's enough ram air coming to the engine that all they're doing is adding fuel into this nozzle, and it's a very specifically shaped funnel that's compressing the air to the point that it's combusting inside of this nozzle, and this allows a very high speed uh, combustion engine. And yeah, there's no turbines, there's no fans, there's no compressors. There might be some kind of fuel control system. I'm sure there is, and I'm sure it's breathing a lot of fuel. Um, and there's all different kinds of other requirements, I'm sure, but that's the gist of it. Is they were able to get this thing moving fast enough where the simple volume of air coming in is enough to compress it to combustion, and the high volume equals heat, and the compression, so it's a continuous combustion happening. And yeah, that's basically how the short and simple of that is. Simple is not always easier. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't strive for simple. I think we should. And I think it's something that we're always kind of playing with in the back of our head, And there's other elements like, do you want to, an interesting design or whatever that play into it, or, more functionality versus simplicity. But at the end of the day, we strive for simplicity, but we typically start with complex.
When you have someone who's coming to you and being like, I went to manufacturing with my product and they want me to get CAD drawings for them, what do I do? Is that something that you do, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's kind of our primary bread and butter is that we do rapid prototyping for manufacturing. And so the idea is, yeah, people come to us and either ask for blueprints or CAD or manufactural files or a 2D drawing or like all kinds of different documentation, but it all kind of it all starts the same way. As like, okay, first we're going to go through and figure out, we're going to validate the design is going to work. That's step one. We're going to validate that we're solving the problem that is at hand. And then we're going to go through and design a solution with you using your ideas. And we're going to validate them every step of the way as we're designing it to make sure that not only is it functional, is it manufacturable, is it going to be reliable, is it serviceable, is it safe, is this something that somebody would want to use? Is it something, that's cost effective for the market, right? These are things we want to look at as we're designing, making sure we're staying inside the requirements in the realm. And then we're going to have a 3D CAD model that you and I are designing together, or somebody on our team comes in and designs with you. And then after we have that CAD design, for most modern day manufacturers, especially if we have a one piece part, we can just send them the CAD, and in the injection molding world, it's very easy to say, hey, we need this, and then just send them over that CAD, and then they'll take it and they'll be able to manufacture it. Most of the time, if we haven't worked with them before, they're going to have some tweaks to their requirements because they have their own tools and they have their own specific requirements, but we'll be like in that 90-95% design there. And sometimes, depending upon the quantity and the manufacturer and their fee structure, sometimes they make the final changes, sometimes we do it. That can all, but we get that design done. The other thing, before we go produce 10,000 of them, we can produce a working prototype that we can put in your hand to make sure that it's getting the function. You can test it. A lot of times we'll make a few of them. You can give them out to your users and make sure that they get the feedback. A lot of times I would suggest that we go through a round of iterations, because once you start to use something, you get it in your hand, you see where things are comfortable, with things are not. You see where things work the best, what features are not as useful as you thought they're going to be. We can either add things or take things off to make it really meet those requirements and have the purpose, the end-all purpose that you want. I always recommend people start with the minimum viable product. So this would be like if you're making a phone stand, you know, maybe we can remove the Bluetooth button for the start and make sure that we'll really look at, okay, what is the key features that separate? If the Bluetooth is the key feature, then we're going to design everything around that Bluetooth. But most of the time, there's a core product, and then there's like, oh, what if we had a flashlight? And what if we had a keychain? And what if we had a siren in case someone's attacking me, and a beater stick, or like, all of a sudden you got like 100 different ideas that we're trying to throw into something. It's like, okay, well, do we want this slim, small stick that we started with, or do we want this Swiss Army knife of a phone stand, right? So then we have to reevaluate what really makes this work, or do we end up with some kind of device that you have attachable accessories, and that's the accessory band or accessory bar is the thing that makes it unique, and then you can throw on and customize however you want. So we need to really look into all those different things and figure out what's going to make the most sense.
So how do you know whether something's actually solving a problem? Because you talked about what you were talking about there is you like we want to make sure that people are going to actually use the product. How do you know if it's a product someone's going to use or not?
So a lot of it comes down to just testing. I mean, I can't pretend to know the psychology of the world. I can only say, okay, well, from my experience, I've seen people interact this way with these types of products. They've got real experience and wisdom. But then we design stuff that's testable, and that's why the prototype's so important. And then you can also not only test the prototype, but test the marketing around the prototype. So you go, okay, once they're printed, you now have a prototype that's working. We can create some media. We can send this out to some influencers. We can get some different feedback. Okay, now we're starting to get a feel for how the market's going to react. Okay, they like these features. They don't like these features. I mean, if you're a car guy, you know that there's so many people that follow older vehicles that were simpler, and a lot of guys still don't like all the new tech. They want to be separated from the world. They want to be able to work on their own vehicles. They want to be more reliable, and they want to be able to drive underwater and all this good stuff. So, or they just like the classic feels. They like the collectible feel. So, for different people, they want different things. And then there's other people that want the hottest, most advanced, luxury SUV. That's on the complete opposite side of that spectrum. So you got to figure out your clientele. You got to figure out what they want and make sure. So it's not necessarily one is right and one is wrong. We're just trying to tailor and figure out what's going to fit and work right towards your market.
And how do I test my idea before I ever bring it to the prototyping session? Like, like how would you do it?
Well, I mean, there's always. I mean, we've had people take sticks of wood and whittle it down to make their concept work. But as simple as just talking to people. Hey, have you experienced this? Do you think you talk to friends, talk to family? They'll give you feedback right away. Now, you got to be careful because friends and family tend to be very agreeable and supportive or very negative. Like, it's, their opinion is typically made before you share the idea. So either ask it in a non-leading way, which can still be tough, or find maybe some people that know you can just kind of trust are going to give you an unbiased. Whether it's going to groups where, like, if you're into golfing, go talk to random golfers. Go to the golf course and actually say, hey, real quick, I'm kind of working on something here. I'm curious to see what you think about this, or you know, uh, I got to keep on to this product. Like, there's certain ways to ask the question that kind of separate you from it. Hey, I'm a and just kind of get creative based on that idea of like, and ultimately it's like, can you collect an email from somebody? Can you get someone to sign up to a platform to be a part of a waiting list for this idea to come out? It can be really tough. Typically, I tell people to do this after they have the prototype because then they can actually show it to somebody and say, hey, and then they can run pre-sales on it and collect all the information, see how many people are willing to buy based on different marketing campaigns. Um, but you can do something similar if you want to do it before you spoke to us. The thing is, if you don't have a clear vision on what it is that you're creating, it's hard to describe that to somebody. So if you kind of have to balance out thinking out the idea versus defining the problem. So you might focus more on defining the problem before you meet with us and say, hey, have you had this problem? We're looking at ways to solve it. Or I just ask them, hey, I see that you're struggling with this problem. Do you think this would be a good solution for you? And if we were able to create that solution, if you found that solution on the market, what do you think that'd be worth? Now, the problem with asking people what they think it's going to be worth or about is like a lot of times people want to be friendly, or they're just going to tell you to butt off, like they're going to get on my face. So those are typically the two responses you're going to get. One of the ways I found around this when I went to school was just to tell them, hey, I'm working on a student project. People like to help students out. You tell people, hey, I'm doing a I'm doing a survey for my college class. Like a lot of people, or for a learning opportunity, gonna be a little more clear. Yeah, I'm doing this project for a learning opportunity, and I would really like your feedback on this idea. People love to share their ideas. You tend to get people that will ramble and ramble on, or depending upon their time constraints, it might be concise. But when people are rambling on, that's when you can really start to see where things are going and feel them out, and you can have follow up questions. For most people, they're going to want you to be pretty concise, and they're going to probably be in the middle of doing something like go to a public space. It can be a little difficult to get a lot of their time. So when you get it, you're really be appreciative and thank them for it, and maybe you can hand out even $5 gift cards or something to Starbucks, and to kind of make it a little bit more rewarding. But you don't really have to do any of that. I never have. I used to do a lot of these polls when I was a student, and it was part of I try to pull 200 people. That was my personal thing. Some people do less, some people do more. After the first 15, 20, you start to get a general idea of like, okay, this is what people feel. But by 200, you're going to really feel like it's getting very repetitive with answers. It's going to be every once in a while you'll get an outlier that has something new to bring. So, if you did 10,000, clearly you're going to have a way better trend on that local market than somebody 200, but yeah.
So then what's the next step after getting a prototype?
Depending upon the part, you might just say, okay, that's 100% it. But most of the time, you're going to want to test it out. You're going to want to test out the prototype and make sure it's working. It's doing those things you need to do. Sometimes it doesn't make sense for us to put all the functionality into a prototype. Like if there's an advanced electronic system with Bluetooth and they have to communicate, we might kind of do it in stages where we test out the mechanics in one and work with somebody else down the line to do electronics so that we can kind of scale up. But we'll make it testable and something that you can put in your hands and try out. And then when you're ready with that, we can connect you with a manufacturing partner that's got your best interest in mind. They're going to work with you until you're cash flow positive, and they're going to help with logistics and branding, with marketing and packaging. And if you want to go patents, we can help you with that. Or so we can really help you every step of the way. Some people go, "Hey, Brent, I really just want to license this." We can show you how we can show you a path to licensing. And that would be an opportunity where patents take a bigger role. But you need a provisional patent there too. So again, it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do, and it's really better just to go with us and figure that out because what's the best for Joe might not be the best for Brandon. It really depends on you as the entrepreneur. What direction do you want to go, and what's your budget, and how do you want to get there, and what's your time frame, and what are your resources? For everybody that we work with, that seems to be a different answer. So I don't like to have a one size fits all, but what we do is have teams in place that can help with all the different.
Awesome. All right, I think that's all my questions.